My name is Tara. I am 29 years old. I work in a small office in the city. I do not have a big job. I help with files, emails, and phone calls. I live alone in a small apartment. My life is quiet, and most days are the same. One Monday morning, I went to work as usual. I was tired, and my coffee was cold. When I walked into the office, I saw a new man sitting at the front desk. He looked up and smiled at me. "Hi, I'm Martin," he said. His voice was warm. His eyes were kind. I smiled back. "I'm Tara," I said. And that was the start. Martin was new in the office. He came from another city. He had just moved with his wife, he said. I did not think much about it. He was just another person at work. But after some days, I began to notice him more. He always said, "Good morning," when I came in. He made small jokes when we passed in the hall. When I forgot my lunch one day, he gave me half of his sandwich. "You need to eat," he said with a smile. I laughed and said, "You sound like my big brother." He smiled again but said nothing. A few weeks passed. We talked more at lunch. Sometimes we worked late and shared tea from the office kitchen. He told me small stories about his life. He said he liked quiet walks, slow music, and long talks. I liked the same things. It felt easy to talk to him. I did not feel lonely when he was near. One Friday, we worked late again. The office was quiet. The lights were soft. I looked at him and said, "You seem happy here." He looked at the floor and said, "Sometimes yes, sometimes no." I did not ask more. I was afraid to know. Before we continue with the story, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of the world are you listening from today? Leave a comment below, and if this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more simple and emotional English stories. That night, I thought about Martin. I told myself he was just a friend. I told myself to stop thinking. But the next day, when he said, "Tara, you look tired. Are you okay?" my heart felt warm. One weekend, I saw him outside the office. It was Saturday afternoon. I was walking near the market when I saw him sitting alone on a bench. He looked sad. I sat beside him. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He waited a second and said, "I had a fight with my wife." He looked at me with tired eyes. I wanted to hug him, but I did not. After that day, we became close. We spoke every day. We had lunch together almost always. People in the office noticed. One woman asked me, "Are you and Martin?" I shook my head fast. "No, just friends," I said. But inside, I wasn't sure anymore. Martin started calling me in the evening, just to talk, just to hear my voice. One night he said, "I feel free when I talk to you, Tara." I closed my eyes and said nothing. My heart was full and heavy at the same time. Still, I tried to stop the feeling. I told myself, he has a wife. I stayed quiet. I smiled less. I ate alone at lunch. But Martin noticed. He sat beside me and said, "Why are you far from me now?" I looked at him and wanted to scream, "Because I'm falling for you?" But I said, "I just need some space." That night, I cried. I looked at my small kitchen, my cold food, my empty chair. I wanted love. I wanted someone to care for me, but not like this. Not someone who belonged to someone else. But love does not ask before it enters. It just comes, soft and slow. And sometimes, it brings pain. The days after that were hard for me. I tried to stay away from Martin, but my heart didn't listen. At work, I answered emails and did my job, but my mind was never calm. Every time he walked past my desk, every time I heard his voice, something inside me moved. It was not just a crush. It was more. It was a quiet feeling that had grown too big to hide. I started dreaming about him at night. I saw us walking together, holding hands, laughing like two people who had nothing to hide. But then I woke up and remembered the truth. Martin was not mine. He had a wife, and no dream could change that. One evening, the office was almost empty. I stayed late to finish a report. Martin came in with 2 cups of tea. He placed one on my desk and said, "You still don't talk to me like before." I looked at him but said nothing. He waited. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, you didn't," I said. "Then why?" he asked. I looked at my screen. My hands were shaking. Finally, I turned to him and said, "Because this is not right. We're not just friends anymore, are we?" There was silence. Martin looked away. I saw pain in his face. He didn't answer my question. Instead, he said, "I think about you when I'm not here." I felt like the air left the room. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. He stood up and walked out, and I sat there alone, with my heart racing and my hands cold. That night I didn't sleep. My head was full of thoughts. Maybe he was unhappy in his marriage. Maybe he loved me. But even if all that was true, what would it change? I didn't want to be someone's secret. I didn't want to live in someone else's shadow. I didn't want to be the reason another woman cried at night. But I also didn't want to lose him. It felt like no matter what I did, someone would get hurt. And maybe that someone was me. The next day was quiet. Martin didn't come to work. He didn't message me. I told myself it was better this way, that we needed space. But I couldn't stop checking my phone. I couldn't stop looking at his desk. When he came back 2 days later, he looked tired. I wanted to ask if he was okay, but I stayed silent. Later that afternoon, he came to me and said, "Can we talk after work?" I said yes. We met at a small cafe near the office. It was quiet, with soft music in the background. He looked at me for a long time before speaking. "Tara," he said, "I can't stop thinking about you." My heart beat fast. He continued, "I feel something real when I'm with you. I haven't felt this way in a long time." I looked down at my hands. I wanted to believe his words. I wanted to hold on to them. But I also needed the truth. "What about your wife?" I asked. His face changed. He looked away. "We're not happy," he said. "We sleep in separate rooms. We barely talk." I listened, but something inside me hurt. "Are you going to leave her?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "I don't know." That was the moment everything broke. I felt something inside me tear. I stood up and said, "I can't do this." My voice was low, but full of pain. "You don't know. That's not enough, Martin. I need more than that." He looked at me, eyes wide, as if he didn't expect me to walk away. But I did. I left the cafe, walked down the quiet street, and cried the whole way home. The next week was the hardest. I avoided him at work. I came in early and left on time. I ate lunch alone. I stopped smiling. At night, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself why I fell for someone I could never have. I blamed myself. I felt foolish. I missed him, but I also hated how small I felt in this story. I was not the wife. I was not the one he chose. I was just the one he came to when he needed to feel alive. And that thought hurt more than anything. One morning, he came to my desk and said, "Please just talk to me." I looked at him. I wanted to be strong. "Martin," I said, "you're married." That's the truth, and I can't be part of this lie. His eyes were red. He whispered, "I was going to tell her. I just needed time." I shook my head. "You had time. You just didn't want to make a choice." Then I turned back to my computer. He stood there for a few more seconds, then walked away. That was the last time we spoke. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a fog. I still went to work. I still sat at my desk. I still smiled when someone asked me how I was doing. But inside, I felt empty. There was a space in my heart that Martin had filled with his soft voice and kind eyes, and now that space felt like a wound. I didn't hate him. I didn't even blame him completely. I just hated the situation. I hated that I had allowed myself to love someone who could never fully be mine. I hated that I had believed, even for a moment, that maybe love could win, even when it wasn't fair. And more than anything, I hated the silence. Martin never called again. He never explained. He didn't fight for me. He simply disappeared like it was easy for him to walk away. But for me, it wasn't easy. Every morning when I passed his empty desk, something in me broke again. It took weeks before I learned he had left the job. No message, no goodbye, just gone. I sat alone in the lunchroom that day and cried quietly into my tea. I wasn't crying for the man who left. I was crying for the woman who stayed. The woman who had to keep smiling, who had to pretend it didn't matter, who had to keep living like nothing had changed. That woman was me, and I didn't know how to be her anymore. But pain has a way of changing shape. It starts sharp, then it becomes heavy, and then one day, it becomes quiet. One morning, I woke up and didn't feel the same ache. I got dressed without thinking about him. I walked to work and noticed the trees, the soft sound of birds, the way the wind felt on my face. I had been living inside my pain for so long that I forgot how the world still moved. I started to pay attention again. I started to see myself again, not as the woman who lost someone, but as the woman who survived something. One Friday, I stayed back after work to help a new team member. Her name was Lily. She was young, shy, and unsure of everything. I saw myself in her, the way I once tried to hide behind my work, the way I tried to please everyone. We worked quietly together for an hour, and then she turned to me and said, "You're really kind, Tara." I smiled. Not because of the words, but because I had forgotten how it felt to hear something nice and believe it. I realized then that even if Martin didn't stay, his leaving didn't break me completely. I was still here. I was still me. The change didn't happen all at once. Some days were better than others. Some nights I still thought of him. I remembered the way he smiled when I made a joke, the way his voice softened when he said my name. But with time, those memories stopped hurting. They became soft corners of my mind, quiet, gentle, and no longer full of pain. I stopped wondering what could have been. I stopped hoping he would come back. Because even if he did, I knew now that I wouldn't want him. Not like before, not as someone who couldn't choose me fully. One Sunday afternoon, I went to a cafe near the park. It was sunny and full of life. I sat by the window and watched people walk by. I saw couples laughing, children running, old friends talking like no time had passed. I felt peaceful. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I had my coffee. I had a good book in my bag. I had quiet in my heart. I didn't need more. A man walked in and sat 2 tables away. He looked a little lost, like he wasn't sure why he came in at all. Our eyes met for a second. He smiled. I smiled back. It wasn't a moment from a movie. It wasn't the start of something big, but it was nice. And sometimes nice is enough. Later that week, I found an old photo on my phone. It was of Martin and me, both holding tea, both laughing. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't delete it. I didn't cry. I just looked at it, smiled softly, and then closed the screen. That part of my life was real. The laughter was real. The pain was real too. But it was over. And I was still here. Time passed slowly after Martin left. For weeks, I moved through life like a person, walking in water. Every step felt heavy. Every hour felt long. I did not cry every day anymore, but I still woke up with a deep, quiet pain in my chest. It was not sharp like before. It was not loud. It was something else now. It was quiet. A slow, steady sadness that stayed with me like a shadow. I stopped looking at my phone. I stopped waiting for messages. I knew he would not write. I knew he had made his choice. And deep down, I knew I had made mine too. Even if he came back now, even if he stood at my door with flowers in his hands and said all the right words, I would not say yes. Because now, I needed something more than love. I needed truth. I needed peace. I needed someone who would choose me the first time. Not after guilt, not after silence, not after pain. At work, things started to feel normal again. People stopped asking about him. His desk was empty at first, then someone new came to take his place. I didn't ask who they were. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to hold on to anything from the past. I only wanted to move forward, even if it was slow. Some nights were harder than others. Some songs still made me feel weak. Some smells reminded me of our late-night teas in the office kitchen. Sometimes I walked past the cafe where we had that final talk. I always looked away. I didn't want to go inside. That place held too many feelings, too many words that hurt, too many dreams that didn't come true. But pain is not the only thing time brings. Time also brings strength. Slowly, I started to enjoy my own company again. I read books I liked. I cooked simple meals. I cleaned my little apartment and made it feel warm again. I lit a candle at night and played soft music. I started going for short walks in the park after work. At first, it was just to breathe, just to feel air that wasn't full of memories. But soon, I started to enjoy it. One evening, I sat on a bench and watched people pass. I saw children laugh and run. I saw old couples walk slowly, hand in hand. I saw girls like me sitting alone with coffee and quiet smiles. And I thought, I'm not broken. I'm just healing. And healing is not loud. It's not fast. It's soft. It's quiet. It's slow. But it's real. My heart was still careful. I didn't want love. I didn't want promises. I didn't want to feel small again. I only wanted peace. But life has its own plans. One afternoon, I walked into a bookstore near my office. I was looking for a gift for a coworker. I didn't expect to see anyone I knew. But then I saw him, the man from the cafe weeks ago. He was holding a book and smiling at something in it. When he looked up and saw me, he smiled again, like he remembered me. I smiled back. It was a soft, simple moment, but it stayed with me. We met again the next week. This time, he spoke first. His name was Daniel. He worked near my office. We talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, just small things. But his voice was kind, and he didn't try to be funny or clever. He was just real, and that felt safe. Over the next few weeks, I saw him a few more times. Once in the cafe, once walking home, once at the park. Every time we said hello. Every time I felt a little more calm. One day, he asked if I wanted to sit for a coffee. I said yes. Not because I was ready for something new, but because it felt easy. We talked for an hour. He told me about his job, about his dog, about his favorite food. I told him about my work, my love for tea, my long walks. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't ask about his. It wasn't the time. But there was peace in that moment, and peace was something I hadn't felt in a long time. As weeks passed, we spoke more. We walked after work sometimes. He would send a short message just to say hello. He never made me feel like I had to answer right away. He never pushed me to share more than I wanted. He let me be slow. He let me be quiet. And that was more than enough. One evening, we walked by the river. The sky was soft with light, the water calm. I told him about Martin, not the full story, just the shape of it. I said, I gave too much to someone who couldn't give it back. He looked at me, not with pity, but with understanding. I know how that feels, he said. I've been there too. We didn't say much after that. We just kept walking. But something between us became real in that silence. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was respect. And that's where healing starts. Weeks turned into months. I didn't count days anymore. I didn't check the date of when Martin left. I didn't replay his words in my head. I didn't wait for what could have been. I lived my life. I worked. I laughed. I listened to music. I shared meals with friends. I smiled when the sun came through my window in the morning, and sometimes I smiled just because I felt light again. Daniel and I became good friends. We met often, sometimes just for a walk, sometimes for a movie, sometimes for a short talk under the trees. He never rushed me. He never asked for more than I could give, and that patience made me trust him. One afternoon, we sat in the park with tea in our hands. The air was warm, and the sky was full of soft clouds. He looked at me and said, "You seem happy." I smiled. "I am," I said. "Not because life is perfect, but because I finally feel like myself again." He didn't say anything right away. He just nodded, and that quiet moment felt full. Not with romance, not with promises, but with something more real. Peace, care, truth. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Daniel and I will become something more. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. But I do know this. I am not the same woman who cried alone in her kitchen. I am not the woman who waited for a married man to choose her. I am not the woman who gave all her love and got nothing back. I am stronger now. Softer, too. I have learned that pain doesn't last forever. That silence can teach you things words never could. That love is not meant to break you. And that the greatest love is the one you give to yourself first. I loved a married man. It broke me for a while, but it also showed me my strength. It showed me what I need, what I want, and what I deserve. And now I walk through the world with quiet feet and a full heart. Maybe love will find me again. Maybe it already has, in small pieces. But this time, I won't lose myself for it. This time, I will stay whole. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.